Hello and welcome. I'm Tommaso Ridani, and this is StoryScanner, the podcast based on the stories headlining Via Sarfatti 25, the magazine from Bocconi University, with analysis and insights from Bocconi professors and researchers on the big topics in business, management, data science and politics. In this episode, we take a look at cryptocurrencies. As we enter a new crypto winter, what lies ahead for the world of digital currencies? Cryptocurrencies came to life in 2009 with the birth of the Bitcoin. No coincidence, it was during the great global financial crisis when distrust of banks and central governments was at a peak. The Bitcoin blockchain was launched in January 2009, and the first reported real-world financial transaction involving Bitcoin took place on May 22, 2010, when a Florida man bought 2 pizzas. And the existence of cryptocurrencies since has been a roller coaster. In April 2011, the price of Bitcoin crossed the $1 threshold for the first time, and prices and trading volumes started to snowball and reached about $20,000 in late 2017. And in 2011, Bitcoin also faced its first competition in the crypto space with the launch of Litecoin, and the birth of new digital currencies also began to snowball, and around 20,000 cryptocurrencies are now estimated to be in existence. But from late 2017, excitement, hype, and a crypto market frenzy created the perfect storm for a first asset bubble. By the end of 2018, Bitcoin prices had been dragged down to less than $4,000 per coin. The next major boom in cryptocurrency popularity came during the COVID pandemic in late 2020, with Bitcoin reaching all-time high values in November 2021. But tightening monetary policy and volatility led to another crisis. In November 2021, the overall market cap of crypto assets had surpassed $2.9 trillion. In August 2022, it was down to $1.2 trillion. And at the peak in November, the price of Bitcoin was $67,500. It is now hovering around $19,000. This dramatic fall was partly driven by rising inflation, tighter monetary policy, and recession fears of the war in Ukraine causing turmoil in financial markets, but also due to long-standing weaknesses of the sector, including fraudulent practices, mismanagement of risk, and inadequate governance strategies. Experts are calling this the next crypto winter. The last one lasted nearly 3 years, from January 2018 to December 2020. But can cryptocurrency survive such a prolonged period of contraction again? Is this the end of crypto, as prophesied many times before? Or will there be a spring after the winter, with the cryptocurrency sector bouncing back? I'm joined by Massimo Amato, professor at Bocconi, an expert on monetary economics, and director of the Observatory on Monetary Innovation, New Technologies in Society, MINTS, who has carried out much research and analysis on cryptocurrencies. Innovative and revolutionary system of payment, or a dangerous and untrustworthy investment? Where does the truth on cryptocurrencies lie? What is their scope and value?
Well, what I should say is that crypto are certainly not an efficient payment system. In the case of Bitcoin, and in general of the majority of cryptos, which are based on the so-called proof of work, these coins are inextricably linked to a form of compensation for those who are called upon to operate it, the so-called miners, and this compensation has no connection with the value of the transaction. So, you can have, theoretically at least, a cost of mining which is greater than the value of the transaction that mining validates. Moreover, in this case, payment times are extremely long compared, if we compare them to systems brokered by third parties, such as banks and payment providers in general. Of course, the problem can be solved by avoiding the proof of work, which is central in Bitcoin, and using the so-called proof of stake. And there are some interesting projects that go in this direction. But in any case, it's certainly no accident that so far a very small percentage of crypto transactions have to do with real payments. Instead, the vast majority of transactions occur in trading. The transactional motive, that is the use of crypto as payment tools, had a growth trend between 2017 and 2018. But then it returned to rather insignificant levels with respect to the speculative motive, that is, to trading. Of course, with trading you can make profits, but you can also incur high losses. And one might say that there is nothing wrong with that. But I add, if there were an underlying value with respect to which prices may vary. But here, in my opinion, lies the major point against crypto as assets. Not only they are scarcely used and, I would add, hardly usable as a currency, but cryptocurrencies are actually assets with no underlying fundamental. This means that they are assets for someone without being liabilities for anyone else. This means that there is no debtor, that is, no issuer about whom one can perform due diligence. This means, in turn, that there is no way to obtain a present value from future income streams of the debtor, as is the case for any other asset on the markets.
Why are cryptocurrencies so volatile? Is stability a mirage?
Yes. As I was saying, there is no way to obtain a present value from future income streams, unlike any other asset on the markets. So, the price of cryptos as assets is essentially driven by expectations that are based on nothing but themselves. You want an example? One of the few strong correlations one can find for the price of Bitcoin is with Google Trends. And one might say, the more people talk about it, the more it is worth. But this testifies that we are facing expectations relying essentially on themselves. In other terms, there is no other real element on which one can base them, these expectations. But stability is an essential element for characterizing an object as money. And the bet of crypto is that it could have been achieved without the use of any explicit monetary policy. So a policy linked to a regulator, public or at least guided by a public objective, the objective of stability. This is one of the roles, even if not the only role of central banks. And obviously, there is no place for something like a central bank in the peer-to-peer, disintermediated world of cryptos.
The new crisis is a chance to create a more orderly environment. The crypto ecosystem is finally going to be regulated in many jurisdictions. The EU is at the most advanced stage, with the markets in crypto asset regulation expected to come into force within the year. In the US, with an executive order, President Biden asked government agencies to make policy recommendations. And the UK announced in April that a regulatory package was coming. But is regulation the answer to provide stability, transparency, and protection for consumers and investors?
Yes. If you want to reduce volatility and instability and the damages that they can procure to the public, the only way is regulation. But we should add, regulation can mean very different things, as Luca Fantacci, the co-director with me of the research unit MINS, has very convincingly showed in a recent post for ISPI. The regulation to which reference can be made is twofold. You can talk about cryptocurrency as assets or commodities. So in the US, there is a jurisdictional conflict on this point. Because if cryptos were qualified as securities, they would fall under the jurisdiction of the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. But if they were instead classified as commodities, they would fall under the presumably more benign control of the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Between this jurisdictional conflict, there are vested interests. clearly. The chairman of the SEC, Gary Gensler, would like stricter controls, and therefore the crypto lobby is opposing this solution. But this solution, in any case, seems to me the most reasonable from an institutional point of view. And in this direction, at a EU level, we have the digital finance package, which has 3 proposals for regulation aimed at promoting the cybersecurity of financial system, the so-called DORA, D-O-R-A. Then we have the creation of a test environment for the adoption of the distributed ledger technology, the pilot regime, and the definition of uniform and consistent rules on crypto. Market in Crypto Asset Regulation, MICA. And this one, the latter, is now close to be launched. So, as I was saying, in Europe the orientation is to consider cryptos as assets, whose market has to be regulated like any other market. To be precise, financial markets, however free and deregulated they may be, are regulated markets in which operators must respond to rules of transparency. This was the center of the question. It is a matter of balancing in every market, balancing the trade-off between security and profitability. An asset yields more, the riskier it is. And given that the general principle applies to the regulator, that applies to regulator is that similar risk must be treated similarly, crypto as an asset class cannot escape regulation. Also because, this is an additional point, given the growing importance of crypto transactions, there is a growing correlation between their prices and the general market trend. In other terms, the potential toxicity of this asset class can intoxicate the whole market. Clearly, we have to add, regulation is a process that reminds of Achilles and the tortoise. Any regulation can give rise to innovation that escape it. But the regulator can and must be as patient as he is farsighted. And he has to adapt his prescriptions to the variation that occur in the space he has to regulate. But just to conclude, I would also like to make a more general remark. Blockchain technologies are very powerful and promising, but precisely because of this, we must learn to take their measure, avoiding any superficial technological enthusiasm. The representation of a monetary and financial system running on autopilot is a dangerous illusion. The history of money, throughout the history of money, what we can learn is the following. When expectations are at stake, time is at stake, and therefore uncertainty is at stake. And with respect to fundamental uncertainty, no algorithm alone will ever suffice.
So what lies ahead in the future for cryptocurrencies?
Well, the first thing we must say is that there is an important difference in value and meaning between blockchain as a technology and cryptocurrencies. The very point is to use the technology for what it can really bring, which is let me say as follows: the possibility of ensuring non-reproducibility of and regulating access to information on the web. This possibility is at its best with smart contracts. But then again, the validity of a crypto used in a smart contract depends on the solidity and transparency of the contract itself, not on any supposed mystical quality of the crypto itself. If, on the other hand, we look at the monetary side, the future of digital currency is, in my opinion, a public one. Attempts have been made to stabilize the volatility of cryptocurrencies through stablecoins, which are cryptocurrency backed with a basket of safe assets and official currencies. The most famous examples are Libra, now Diem, proposed by Facebook, now Meta, which forced central banks to react. The other is Tether, with a capitalization of more than $50 billion. But in any case, even when they look solid, private stablecoins lack transparency and do not seem, until now, to be very useful as a means of payment. My opinion, if I have to sum it up in a formula, is that the only good stablecoin is a public stablecoin. And it is no coincidence that Facebook's attempt to build a stable but private global currency has greatly accelerated projects to build central bank digital currency, CBDCs. First in China, but also in Europe, both at the level of single countries, such as Sweden with the e-krona, and at the level of the Eurozone with the Digital Euro project, which we gladly discussed together with one of the main contributors, Ulrich Binzeil of the ACB, in one of our first Mints seminars. Having said that, there is one important aspect that should not be underestimated. What blockchain technology makes possible are decentralized ledgers. In this sense, this is an important opportunity to redistribute the decision-making power and to build less hierarchical institutional architectures with less concentration of power. And this aspect is potentially highly beneficial. And it would be good if no regulation, while regulating it, were to eliminate it altogether. But this is the good news. In fact, this is a route that can be taken. While CBDCs centralize the power to issue money in the central bank, as is natural and institutionally correct, they are compatible in their implementation with the central bank's cooperation with a vast number of intermediaries, whose task would be precisely not to create money, but to circulate it. And a decentralized technology clearly has the possibility of highly facilitating the circulation of money, for instance, through targeted money issues, that is to say, aimed at specific economic agents. This possibility would add a powerful new channel to the transmission of monetary policy, which, during recent crises, has shown several flaws.
I hope you enjoyed hearing about cryptocurrencies, where we are at, and where we could be heading with them. You can read more about this topic and many others in the new issue of Via Sarfatti 25 magazine, with opinion, research and insights from Bocconi professors and researchers. And I hope you'll join me again for the next episode of StoryScanner.